Hi everyone, welcome to the Homebound kitchen, as it will be for the next month, and then we'll be in a much nicer kitchen. It is definitely messy. We've been working on packing up and moving, but I thought I would bring you guys into the kitchen today anyways, so we could process some carrots together to get them up in the freezer and chat about how to preserve the harvest when you don't have a harvest to preserve. So for the last 3 years, we've been living in an apartment and we have not had a garden. We have never been in a prime position to grow anything on our patio. We have the worst lighting and conditions on our patio for anything to grow. So we have been preserving the harvest on other people's harvest so that we can keep our freezer nice and full for the fall and winter. So I will talk a little bit about some tips I've learned in the last 3 years, and we're gonna process some carrots together so they can be put in the freezer, and those will be great for stir fries or soups, or just setting on the side of a meat plate or whatever as a nice vegetable side. Whatever you want to do with them, they're perfect. The bag of carrots I got about 5 pounds of them, and I think I paid $4. They're like rainbow carrots. And I put a bunch of them, I sliced them up and I put them in some filtered water to put in the fridge. I thought I'd show you that really quick. This is a new trick to me. I'll make sure I'm not like cutting my head out here. I learned this year that if you put them like that, they'll last a whole month. And I appreciate that because it means I don't have to buy carrots so often and we can still have a steady supply to munch on. So in order to put them in the freezer, we're gonna take them. I've got a carrot that is partially cut up. That's for my bird. We're actually gonna leave that alone for him. Or at least we'll take a chunk off and leave it there for him. Little Milo bird who loves carrots. I don't think he was like such a big fan of the purple one actually, so we're gonna give him some of the orange one I have left. Otherwise, I don't have a whole bunch of carrots left. Just holding fistfuls of carrots. Every woman's dream. I don't know, like carrots were always my favorite thing to grow as a kid other than peas because they're so yummy out of the garden. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna quickly wash them up and we're gonna snip off the ends. I don't tend to take off the peels. I don't see the point. I think they're tasty. And that's about that for the carrots. So while I'm washing them up, I'm not gonna say anything because it's probably gonna be pretty noisy. Motherly duties called. So I washed all the carrots and I have some nice hot water sitting on the stove. Now I'm going to turn it on since I'm back in the kitchen, and we are going to get working on processing the carrots. So I ask you to be patient with me. I'm so stressed out from the move coming up. Even though it's a positive move, I do not navigate stress very well. So I have a whole bunch of tightness here in my body and it just makes breathing challenging, and sometimes I get a little winded when I talk. But it will all be fine. Everything's gonna be good once we're in and settled. There's a lot to go yet though. So for the carrots, they're all nice and washed. I'm just gonna move some of them out of the way. And I'm gonna cut a length off for the bird so that he has some for throughout the week. So for him, I just put them through the shredder, or the grater rather, and shred them up and put them in his bowl. He loves that. So we'll keep that piece for him. We'll just set it aside over here for now. And I'm gonna take all the end pieces and just stick them in a bag, and those will go down to the chickens when we go for a visit on Saturday. So normally I'd line up all the carrots, but I don't wanna be super noisy over here. So I don't really know how this is gonna sound in the video. And we'll just make sure y'all can hear me. So preserving the harvest when you don't have a harvest to preserve is kind of, it takes a little bit of practice. I found that I still wanted to be able to trust in the food I was getting. I didn't want to just be going to the supermarket and buying any old food that was raised with, you know, all kinds of harsh chemicals and stuff like that. I have a pet peeve when people say raised with chemicals is bad. Anything is a chemical. I'm pretty sure manure could even be classified as a chemical, and yet that's like, to me, totally fine. I don't worry if that kind of stuff is used when we're gardening because that's how we get good soil. So I just say harsh chemical free because I don't want like harsh stuff on my food. So anyways, the best thing I found is going to the farmer's market. And people always say, you can't go to the farmer's market and actually save money. And I think that's crazy, because I have never walked out of the farmer's market spending more than $70 on my vegetables and my produce of any type, and I always end up with so much in the freezer. One moment, I have no idea what sound's going on in the background right now. Milo Bird is sitting in the bedroom making all sorts of funny scratchy sounds, and I thought it was Scarlett in her room needing help with something. That always happens when you have a bird in the house and a kid in the house at the same time. So anyways, I would go into the farmer's market, and the trick is you buy what's in season. Usually that's all that's available anyways. And you buy the biggest amounts you can buy, because they're always gonna give you volume discounts. If you know you're gonna be putting it right in the freezer, a lot of people say buy food that is in its peak ripeness, because then it's gonna be better in the freezer. I have found that you can usually buy like a case lot or a box of produce that is too ugly to sell. People don't want it. And it's still in a good point of ripeness to be put in the freezer. It costs way less, and you get enough to go in at once. So the way that I would do it is, each week we would go to the farmer's market and we would buy a small amount of fresh produce for the week, and then the rest of our budget would be spent buying these big case lots. And that way I was able to put a bunch of stuff in the freezer. So I put carrots, peppers, I can't even think of anything. I put so many things in there: beans, peas, broccoli, cauliflower. Cabbage wouldn't do so good in the freezer, I don't think. I never put leafy greens in the freezer. I don't think they come back out very well, so I don't do that. Anyways, for leafy greens, you could always grow it on your counter if you had proper lighting, but like I said, we really haven't. It looks like I have a nice bright window. I do. It's all indirect light though, because we have a north facing window, so the sunlight usually always misses our patio, except for maybe between the hours of about 5 and 7:30 in the morning in the summer. Otherwise, we have no direct light. And most plants like direct light for at least 6 hours a day. So anyways, with these carrots, as you already know, carrots go larger to smaller. So the way I like to do it is I will cook it so that I cook it in batches, with carrots being kept roughly the same size. And that way, when I'm going to do stews, I can get nice big pieces of carrots. When I'm doing something like a stir fry, I can get smaller pieces. In certain broths, I'll use the smaller pieces of carrot and I'll cook it until they're really mushy, and then I kind of like mash it in, and it makes a nice thick veggie type broth in your soup. I really like that sometimes. So do whatever you want, but ultimately we just want to get these cut up. Berries are another thing I like to put in the freezer. I always buy a lot of those. You can get a good deal if you go to a U-Pick berry farm and you just buy your berries that way. It's usually around here about $15 for an ice cream pail if you pick it yourself, and about $20 if you buy it out of their freezer where they've already picked it for you. So sometimes I'll spend the extra $5 just because we don't really want to always go out in the field and be picking. I have a big issue. It's not so bad anymore. I'm really freaked out by wasps though. So I know that's going to be fun to navigate once we're doing our own garden. But yeah, in the meantime, just not the biggest fan. The other thing about U-Pick farms is sometimes I feel a little uncomfortable going into other people's gardens, especially when there's a lot of other people there. I get a little bit anxious around a lot of people. So sometimes we just buy them out of the freezer, and that works just fine. If you wait a while, usually they'll get a nice big stock in the freezer and you can buy as many as you need. In an apartment, as we've been, you can definitely do water bath canning. You could do pressure canning too, but Homebound husband was always a little leery of that. He didn't want me to explode the pressure canner into our neighbors upstairs, like into their floor. So he usually would ask me not to do that. And to be honest, I am a little intimidated by the idea of exploding the pressure canner. I'm sure I wouldn't, but just the idea of it freaks me out. And so we haven't really tackled that yet. We will be trying that next year though. So I am just organizing the carrots by size now so that when I go to cook them, they're already in their sizes, and it'll be easier to put them in the freezer with carrots that are roughly the same size. And again, you could cut yours however you want to. I cut mine like little coins because that's just the easier way to do it. Isn't that a beautiful carrot? It's got the orange in the center there. Let's see. Yeah, if you have a decent storage space, you can always put your canned goods in your storage space, and that way you're keeping it out of your fridge and your freezer. I've also seen a lot of nice chest style freezers that you could definitely fit in an apartment. We were actually going to plan on doing it here. If you'll see, oh, you actually can't see, but there's 2 tables right there, and we would have fit a deep freeze there just fine, but that won't be necessary as we won't be here anymore, and we're going to have one of the really big ones on the farm. So that's that. What else can we think? When I put my stuff in the freezer, I like to try to keep it in a way where it is as ready to go into my recipes as possible. So I will usually keep about the amount of an ingredient that I would use in a recipe together in a single serving bag, so that it's easier just for me to grab it out and throw it in. That way you're always defrosting just the amount you need and you don't end up with too much in the fridge. I find if I store it any larger than that, I'll be very well intentioned. I always think I'm gonna use the whole bag, but then I'm like, you know what, actually I don't wanna have that tonight. And I change my mind, and then the bag will end up sitting there until we're ready to use it. And then sometimes we're not, so it ends up going to waste. So I stopped storing them that way. With these scraps that I have here that I'll be giving to the chickens this time, normally I would put those in the freezer and I would keep them in a bag, and when my bag got full enough, I would throw all the scraps into a pot of water. Actually, usually I process a whole bunch of stuff at once, so I will do it that way, or just on a day like today, I would have just taken all my scraps, used the water that I processed the carrots in already, and put them back. One sec, mommy duty calls. There we go. What was I saying? Usually I'd make a broth out of it all, and I would keep about usually half of my broth, my total broth from the whole year, just vegetable broth, so that if I wanted to, you know, like add meat to it at a later date, or just have vegetable broth in a certain recipe, I had that. And then the rest of it I make chicken broth with, because chicken is the most common soup that we eat, homemade chicken soup, and so that just is how that always worked out. So doing it this way is really good. You get a really nice colorful broth. Some people say broth shouldn't be colorful. I think those people are crazy. I like a colorful broth. I think it has way more flavor that way. It's also prettier to look at. My broth I will keep in ice cube trays in the freezer, and once I have enough, that goes into a nice big freezer bag or container depending on what I have at the time, and that just stays there. I think it's usually 5 to 6 ice cubes out of our ice cube tray will equal 1 cup of broth. So that's how I'm able to do that math. Now, I really think it's important you always freeze things in a way where it's easy to measure it when you're coming out to defrost it. It just makes cooking much, much easier. It helps save space in your fridge because you've already allotted for that space in the freezer. So if you're gonna take something out to defrost it, I like to kind of keep that moving really quickly so that my fridge isn't getting too full. Otherwise, you get that thing where stuff gets shoved to the back and everyone forgets it's there and then nobody eats it. I hate food waste. You will figure that out nice and quick. I will eat everything. I like to keep my grocery bill as low as possible. One way I've been doing that with meat in the apartment is by buying the ugly cuts that nobody wants. I currently have a freezer full of, well, not necessarily full, but I have a plenty chicken necks and backs in the freezer, and I will buy those because it's about $3 for a nice big package of them, and I will make my broth out of that. So out of 1 package of those necks and 1 package of beef marrow bones, the knuckles, I was able to get 13 bags of stock, and those are 1 cup bags each, and then a couple of them are a little bit more than 1 cup because I didn't want to save like a quarter cup by itself. I thought that was a little crazy. So that's how we do everything. I like to keep my ingredients as close to separate as possible. I do this in my pantry, I do this in my freezer, everything like that. And that's because I like to make things from scratch. And if something has already been mixed up, you can't unmix it, right? So if I need a cup of carrots and I've mixed all my carrots with peas and broccoli and stuff like that, then I'm not gonna have just carrots. I'm gonna have to go to the store and buy them, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So I keep it nice and separate. And yeah, I do the same thing in my pantry. So I know growing up, my mom used to really like buying the Betty Crocker pancake mix and Bisquick. And those are two things I've learned to just make at home. And I'll keep them, my Bisquick homemade mix, that's actually on the blog. If you go to www.sheshomebound.com, you'll see it there. And that I keep in the fridge because it has butter in it, so you don't want to keep that on your shelf. You could, some people do, I just don't want to. I don't want it to spoil. And then for my pancake mixes, I don't have any made right now, but I'll usually just use a container like this, a jar, and I'll pre-make it in there, and I'll write down whatever the instructions are for it. And that way, when I am ready to make pancakes, I have the mix there. So this year we actually started making sourdough pancakes. Those were really yummy. I know this is totally off topic now, but it's definitely worth pointing out. That recipe for sourdough starter and for those pancakes is also on the blog. They're super, super yummy. Even Homebound husband, who's not generally a sourdough fan, at least that's what he told me for years and years, he absolutely loved these pancakes. Homebound daughter, who tends to have a pickier appetite, she also absolutely loved these pancakes. And I liked them. And another thing is they can easily also be fed to the chickens if you end up with too many. The batch I put on the blog, for us, it's enough for 2 days. I would not recommend keeping it in your fridge longer than 24 hours because it will set in a weird way and then your pancakes just won't taste good. They won't cook all the way through. They'll be dense, not good. So if you're gonna make them, make the batter in the morning, cook half of it, put the other half in the fridge and make it the following morning. That's totally fine. And yeah, it works really, really well that way. So we just have the water just about boiling here. And yeah, I'm having fun making these videos. They're pretty interesting. I have quite a few ideas of what we're gonna do together on these videos. I'll be putting them in the Homebound Homestead group on Facebook, as well as on YouTube, and then from YouTube I can share them over to the page. So hopefully you get plenty of opportunities to catch these videos. Like I said in episode 1, if you have like specific stuff you like to see or a specific way you prefer to learn about things, please let me know. I love sharing, I love informing, educating in whatever way I can. So the more I understand how you like to receive your information, the easier it is for me to make something that's going to be really easy for you to bookmark or print off or whatever and look at later in your chosen way. So unfortunately the camera's mounted. I really want to be able to show you all the carrots I've got here. But here, let me see if I can just do it while we wait for the water to boil. They're so pretty looking with all the different colors. I'll at least show you some of them hopefully here. So pretty with all the colors. I love the rainbow carrots. If you do buy these, something I would point out right now is this. In the future, I would only put the orange carrots in. Like I said, this was totally new to me. I'm actually finding that as matchsticks, I'm not a really big fan of the other colors. They're not as sweet as the orange carrots. So they'll definitely be better for roasting or putting in a soup or something, but just as is, nobody in my family is touching them. We've literally eaten, other than this jar, all the orange ones and none of the purple or white or yellow, but they're super pretty. The other thing I'll point out, and I'm not sure how this is gonna happen when I blanch these in a minute here, the purple ones are very potent in their dye. Like in the future when I'm doing my yarn spinning, I'll probably use purple carrots to dye some of the yarns a nice deep purple color because they're so pretty and they're so rich in dye. The thing is, when you cook them with other colored carrots, they can actually dye them. So we're gonna see what happens and see if we end up with mostly purple carrots or if we keep our good rainbow selection. I figured that out when I bought rainbow carrots. They were pre-frozen. Let me see if I still have those. So here they are. I really like this brand if you're buying yours from the store. They're grown in the States, actually, not Canada, which is totally fine by me. I usually prefer to go from as close to home as possible, but the States is close enough. It's grade A assorted sizes, they call them. You'll just see there, it's just tri-colored carrots. And the brand is called Stallbush Island Farms. I can't speak much to the gardening practices here. I'm not really sure, haven't done much research, but they do make really good frozen packs, and I like to keep those in the freezer. I have these, I have their sweet potatoes and a few of the berry brands. Okay, my phone is having a hard time with storage, so I'm just gonna yap about nothing for a second here in case it shuts off again. I've redid this part like 4 times and it keeps shutting off at like the 10-second mark. So I think we're gonna be okay this time. I deleted a whole bunch of stuff. I've never had that happen on my phone before, so I must be yapping a lot right now. Anyways, I have already processed 1 batch of my carrots. Looks like we're good this time. And I'm putting the other one into the cold water. Those frozen vegetables I was showing you, those are what we buy at the end of winter and the beginning of spring when the gardening season is just starting to pick up around here, or like it hasn't really come into season just yet. And that way we have good high quality stuff in the freezer, at least from what I know. So I have 1 batch of carrots left to process here. I'm going to try and do this nice and quickly so we don't run into any more issues. And in the meantime, there we go. So we're putting them all in. I am happy to report, now I don't know what's been cut off and what hasn't been. So if I'm saying something and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, just bear with me. None of the carrots that weren't purple turned purple. The water is, however, a very beautiful hue of dark blue, which I enjoy. So we have our carrots. There's the last batch is in the boiling water. It sits there for about 2 minutes. And then I have 1 in some cold water. Usually you put ice in there. I just put super cold water to the top because I don't have any ice cubes right now, but that'll do fine. The goal is to stop the cooking process as quickly as possible. The rest of the carrots are sitting on a cookie tray that's lined with a tea towel. These are the smallest ones I did. They had the most color, so I was super excited to share those with you. Those will sit on the cookie platter until they're pretty dry. Then I'm going to take another platter and I will spread them out so they're not touching, and I'll freeze them for about half an hour. Then I'll take them in about 1 cup increments and I will put them into bags. Honestly, I don't know actually if I'll do that with this batch because it's kind of small. I'll probably just save them based on their size, and at that point you just break them apart in the bag and pull out what you need. So that's what's been going on since my phone started having problems. I have been having sort of an issue with my phone for the last little while, deciding that the storage is full, but I can't seem to figure out on what. It keeps saying other. So I'm gonna have to get Homebound husband to figure that out because I don't know what any of that is. He was a computer technician when we met, so he's pretty nifty with that stuff. I, on the other hand, I just know how to press go. He does everything else. So as I said earlier, I'm sure this part was in the video, I will keep this carrot water for broth for future uses. So if I knew I was going to be processing more vegetables this week, I would just keep it in the fridge. It should be good there for about 7 days. I will not be, because on Saturday we're going to the farm and we'll be there for a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze it in ice cubes as I normally would, and that will just help me save a little bit of space in the freezer. Then when I'm ready to process more vegetables, I'll defrost it the day before and I'll use that to boil in place of just plain water out of the tap. And I'll keep doing that for a little while, reusing the water until it's nice and like just really deep color, full of flavor. You do want to be careful. There is a point where you've gone a little too far. It just won't taste like anything. If that happens though, I've done this a few times, I will keep it, I mark it as having gone too far, and then I just use it in something like a chili or a stew, I might use like half the broth, I'll use that, or I'll just use it all together if it's just gonna be like a chili, because you're gonna mask it with your herbs and all your other things you're adding in anyways. So I don't find it to be that big of a deal. Some people though have told me that they've gone so far that my tap is dripping, their broth, their vegetable broth tastes bitter. If it got bitter, I'm not sure what I would do with it at that point. That would be something I'd figure out if I ever get there. Anyways, I'm gonna transfer this, not quite yet actually, I gotta get fresh cold water. This is gonna be warmer. So we're gonna get some cold water here, and we will just put these carrots in there, and I'll see if I can show you the color of the broth or the water now. It's got a really beautiful color here. It's almost like a green blue. I keep checking to make sure that it's still on. I really don't want to talk to myself again. I was talking to myself for like 5-10 minutes on and off because of what my phone was doing. It was pretty silly. Yeah. So anyways, this is how we do carrots, and there's some information on how we preserve the harvest. If you didn't have a farmer's market, something I did want to mention is you can often find a lot of what we call here farm to gate. And farm to gate just means someone grows their own stuff in their backyard and they sell the excess of what they don't need. So we're really lucky that where we live, we have a lot of really good farmers, and they grow all kinds of things. So in the end of July this year, we'll actually be picking up a whole bunch of stuff, and then in the end of August, we'll pick up even more, and that will be what goes in the freezer. So yesterday I was talking about the meat we're putting in the freezer. I talked about the beef, which there was also some pork in that economy pack, and then chicken and quail. And then this is how we get our vegetables in the freezer. And then next year we'll also be doing some canning of the vegetables, so we can get them on a shelf as well, because shelf stable, it just uses less energy. You don't need to do anything with it, you just leave it. So we'll also have a root cellar, which I'm looking forward to. We're like sort of a root cellar. It's going outside in a shed, but it'll do what it needs to do. So anyways, let's see if we can show you. You know what, actually I'll just pour the broth into, I think this should do. And then I'll definitely be able to show you the color. It's a nice, really deep color. This happens anytime you cook purple carrots, or we have a little more than we need to fill this. Purple carrots or purple potatoes. You get like this really deep bluish, kind of gray, like dark. It makes me think of where the Loch Ness Monster would probably live. Maybe we should call it Loch Ness broth. Anyways, that is the process of putting carrots in the freezer. Again, I can't remember what I said on this video and what got cut off, so I will just share the last little bit one more time just in case. These will sit here. We'll move these ones over while I talk. These will sit here on the tea towel until they are dry. Once they're pretty much dry and Scarlett has nibbled her share of them, they will be transferred onto, I have like a pizza tray, and they will go onto the pizza tray in a single layer, and then they will go into the freezer like that for maybe half an hour, maybe an hour. It kind of depends if I forget about them or not. And then at that point, you don't want to do it too long because you don't want them to start to get freezer burn. At that point though, they'll get transferred into bags. And so normally I would put them in pre-measured packs, but because I'm going to flash freeze them this way and I don't really have enough to do like multiple cups of bags in each individual size right now, I'll just save them by their size and I'll take out whatever I need on the nights that I need them. And these will go great in stews or stir fries. They'll go good as a side. They're good in soup. Really whatever you want to do with carrots you could do. And there's all our carrots. Thank you for joining me today. And like I said, I'm not really sure what the upload schedule is going to be on this right now. With us moving in a little over a month, it's just not reasonable for me to add more things into a specific schedule. So I will try to film as often as I can and share those films with you. And then once we're on the farm, I will see if I can figure out a schedule that is easier to stick to. And we will do all sorts of things, like ranging from cooking or preserving the harvest or raising livestock, different little livestock. I'm not really like a big hardcore person. We're not getting into cow or pig until like next year, maybe the year after. Stuff like that. We'll just figure out. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens and we'll go from there. So thank you for joining me in my kitchen today, and I hope to see you back here very soon. Bye.